So this is the second half of public key infrastructure session. And we're first of all starting off with an online presentation from Maria Isabel Gonzalez Vasco, who's going to talk about auditable asymmetric password authenticated public key establishment. And I believe Maria is online. Welcome, Maria. We're ready for you.
Okay, thanks a lot, and sorry that I moved you out of a very nice poster session, but and thank you everyone for staying till this last session of today. I'm very sorry not to be there, so I'm going to present our work, which has been done jointly with Antonio Faonio from Eurecom, Claudio Soriente and Hienti Tutron from NEC Labs Europe, and I am Maribel González Vasco from Universidad Rey Juan Carlos in Madrid. Okay, so I'll start by motivating a little bit our work. So in many online applications, it is clear that today we need to sync messages. And of course, non-repudiation is a desirable property. So for this issue, we use certified public keys. And then there comes the problem that users need to somehow have access to their secret signing keys. And one solution, of course, is that they store them and guard them themselves, for instance, in a smart card, which they will later use whenever they want to sign a message on a certain device. But of course, this is kind of not very practical nowadays, and there are very few devices with smart card readers that people like to carry around. And in the end, if a concrete user would like to store himself his signing key, he will end up having to record it in a number of devices, which is also not a very good idea. It's very inconvenient, and on top of that, it will be very tempting to fall into certain bad uses, like not refreshing your keys often enough, because if you have them on many devices, then it's really quite a pain to have to be updating keys all the time. Then you could easily lose physically a device like a smartwatch or a mobile phone, and then your signing key would be there. So there are a lot of drawbacks of this approach. Therefore, because of this, a very extended alternative is to use cloud-based public key infrastructures. So in a nutshell, what's it's often done is we have a server in a trusted cloud somehow, who's in charge of generating key pairs and certifying them, and also of publicizing the public verification keys that are linked to a certain client. And they also give each client the signing key whenever needed. Or moreover, what is more often the case is that the client, the user, authenticate himself to the server whenever he wants to sign, typically using something like a short memorable password or a one-time code that is sent to his phone. And then is the cloud actually, or the server in the cloud, the one that actually will sign on his behalf. So he will never really touch or use his secret signing key. And of course, this is a very convenient method, and it has many pluses, but it also has a few minuses, right? Because you need to deposit a lot of trust on this server, which is in the clouds, as eventually this server may decide to sign things that maybe you didn't really want to sign. And on top of this, also, the server has to be, if he's honest, protected from malicious users who eventually could claim that some message have been signed by the server without his or her consent. So we have two problems there. There's the problem of repudiation, which is indeed very relevant. So any user can say, I didn't sign this was signed by the server and I didn't have anything to do with it. And also there's the problem of untrusted servers or malicious servers who would misbehave and sign things. So we need somehow a better solution. And what we had in mind was to keep with this spirit of server-aided key generation, and to also find a construction in which a user will only have to memorize or keep a password with which he will authenticate himself to a server. And then what we wanted it to have something cooperative, so that user and server may jointly execute a protocol to generate on the fly signing keys. Signing keys in such a way that the secret key will be private output to the user, and he will be able to use it for signing, and then he will not need to store it for a subsequent occasion. So in the future, whenever he wants to sign again, he will just repeat this procedure. He will authenticate himself to the server, generate a new key pair, and sign messages from that point on. And the server, of course, will be the one in charge to, for instance, publicize the verification keys. So this was what we had in mind. And then in this scenario, in order to achieve non-repudiation, we would need some sort of auditing system, so that given the public key and the transcript of the protocol, the server is able to somehow prove to a third party that a corresponding secret key is held by a certain user. So there should be a way to link a verification key to a certain client, to a certain user that is holding some password. No? So this is what we had in mind, and to protect the user, we needed to also make sure that this mechanism is non-frameable, in the sense that if a server claims that a certain user has signed a message, and this is not the case, then the auditor, a potential auditor, seeing the public key and the transcript of the protocol, would see that the signature cannot be linked to that user. Okay, so this is what we had in mind, and this is actually this was actually our plan. And once we tried to get things down, first thing we realized is that we needed to go to a two-server scenario, and to assume that at least one of the servers should be honest. And the reason is that if we want to authenticate users using passwords, for instance, and you give the password, the server you're interacting with, your password, then he will be exactly in the same position as you are. So it will be very hard unless we employ like heavier tools to prevent the server from signing on your behalf. So it's just simpler to distribute the authentication so that the two servers together check on your password without without any of them knowing the full password alone. And in this scenario, we could get strong security guarantees. So we worked in the universal composability model. So we defined the functionalities that we would need, and we ended up having a description of a functionality for this tool for auditable asymmetric password authenticated public key establishments, and also to bring things down to a concrete, realistic design for DLOC-based signatures. So this is what we're going to see. And our main tool is a functionality for oblivious pseudo-random function evaluation. So this is a sort of old tool that was proposed by Naur and Reingold, and essentially is a two-party protocol that allows a user and a server to jointly evaluate an element from a pseudo-random function family in such a way that the server will choose the function, the client or the user will choose the input, and only the user will see the evaluation. So this is the idea, that you have the user with the input X, which is private input. The server will pick a key K also privately. They will interact, exchange some messages, and in the end, the user will get as private output the evaluation of the function with key K on his input X. So this is nothing very hard to implement. So in particular, for our concrete design, we chose a very simple OPRF, which was proposed by Jarki and others at Euro S&P a few years ago, which is based on a one more Diffie-Hellman assumption and random or-column model. So it's very simple to explain. We have a group of prime order M, and in this group we need to take this one more Diffie-Hellman assumption for the security proof. And there are two hash functions. One of them just ranges on bit strings of a certain size, and the other one ranges on the group. So the PRF is defined as follows. If you're given a key K, which is chosen uniformly at random as an integer smaller than the order of the group. Then you set the function as the hash of this input and concatenate it with the group element that is defined by the inputs and the key. So you take the input X, you hash it into the group, and then you raise it to the exponent that is indicated by the key. And this, of course, if you believe on this Diffie-Hellman type assumption and you believe on the random oracle assumption that H behaves somehow ideally, then this will look pseudo-random if everything is done properly. And the way to evaluate this function in a distributed manner is also very simple. So we have the client who's selecting a mask R, which is also an integer smaller bounded by the group size. And then you mask the group element that is defined by your input X with this R. So you raise to the R the group element H prime to the X, and you send it to the server. The server has chosen a key K, and what he does is simply raising again what he gets to this exponent. So he gets another group element B, and it's easy to see that now the client may unmask what he got, so raise B to 1 over R, and this way he gets exactly the element H prime of X raised to the key that was chosen by the server. So you get exactly what you had in the previous slides as the output of the pseudo-random function. Okay, so far everything good. Now, from all this, we give a simplified explanation of our A2 bake construction. So the actors are our client who wants to sign, 2 servers, and an auditor that may come into play if we want to prove that someone has signed something. And there, now the client should register himself, and this should be done through an authenticated channel. So he goes to the servers and says, hi, I'm client whatever, with some email or identity string. And then server will choose random keys linked to this client. So each server will choose an integer in a certain range. It depends on how we do it. So server 1 stores K1, server 2 stores K2, and then the user will be recognized using his password in a threshold way somehow, and will establish a signing key pair, SK star, PK star, which will involve K1 and K2. We will see later how this can be done, so that PK star will be certified by server 2. So server 2 will assign PK star, and this will be stored by server 1. So server 1 will store like a string with the name of the client, PK star, and the signature constructed by server 2, which is like a certificate of this public key, so that from this point on, the user will be able to reconstruct this SK star for proving his identity to the servers anytime from his password. So he will, after this interaction, there will be an entry in a registration list that the servers will keep corresponding to this client, but the client will only need to store his public key. Okay, then later on, at the time when this client needs to sign a document, he will have to reconstruct SK star that was established upon registration using his password. And then this will be used to authenticate subsequent communication, in which a fresh signing key pair will be generated, jointly interacting with these 2 servers. At this point, the public key of this pair will be made public, while the secret key will be private output to the user, who will use it for signing and eventually destroy it or delete it, hopefully, so that there's no problem with it. At a later stage, if a server wants to prove that the public key that was generated at an authentication phase corresponds to a certain client, he will have to go to the auditor and give certain information so that the auditor is able to assess that this public key is indeed linked to him, using, of course, evidence that has to do with the previous phase. No? And it will be crucial that the public key that is used to verify the signature is linked, of course, to the secret key SK star that was established upon registration. Okay, so this for DLOC signatures, this can be done as follows. This is a sketchy simplification, but I hope it's easier to follow. So we have the registration phase. Here's the client that goes here with his password as a secret input somehow, and he will with this password, construct a group element, h prime of password, raise it to a mask R, which is randomly chosen, and then he will send a request to the two servers, which is my name and this group element. And then they will behave as in the OPRF evaluation, but in a cooperative way. So each of them will choose an exponent, K1 and K2, and the OPRF evaluation will be for the function with key K1 plus K2. So in the end, if you see the secret key SK star is constructed as in the password, which was the client's input, and the thing which is next to the password will be the hash h prime of the password raised to K1 plus K2. And of course, there will be a corresponding public key. And okay, once this is done, and this registration phase is finished and everything is validated, then this link to the client, we will have these two keys, K1 and K2, stored by each of the servers, and also PK star and the signature sigma2, which would be used if needed in an audit phase. Then further, if at a later time the user wants to sign something, he more or less replicates this phase, but also involving two random integers. So he will, on top of doing everything to reconstruct SK star and PK star, because he never stored them, what he will do is to choose XC, which is a random integer, and server one will choose XS, and these two random values translated into bit strings or as you like, or as integers, will be part of the public key that is, of the secret key that is later to be established so that this client can sign. So his secret key will be XC plus XS. XS will go in the clear. And when he generates XC, he will later send to the servers the result of raising a generator to this value, and then he will have to prove that he knows the corresponding deluxe. So these are technicalities so that, yeah, there's no one messing around with the communication, because all these black arrows are in an unauthenticated channel. Okay, so then very important, what he will do, the client, is to sign this public key with the secret key SK star that he has constructed upon registration, so that this signing pair, the signing key pair that has been generated here, is linked to the registration phase. And then if all checks are okay, the public key is publicized and it's understood that everything worked fine. If at a later stage, there's a server who wants to prove that this public key PK belongs to a certain client, he will only need to provide these two signatures, sigma star and sigma 2 and PK star, so that an auditor can verify that indeed sigma star is a signature of this public key PK with the secret key SK star that is linked to the client upon registration, and also to verify that server 2 was actually also happy with the establishment of this registration phase, right? Because he also signed SK2 with his key SK2 PK star. Okay, so then the auditor will be able to see whether the public key is or not consistent with the entry that corresponds to this client. Okay, so I know that has been a little bit fast, but I hope you get the idea of how it works. So a few final remarks. If we need forward secrecy, we need timestamps in an implementation of such a scheme, because of course, if a password is leaked, any subsequent key generation could have been done, may have been done by the adversary. So you have to link each authentication phase with a certain timestamp, so that we can be sure of which signing keys might be adversarially generated once a password is leaked. Also, it's important to remark that authenticated channels are unavoidable for registration. In particular, if you want some kind of auditability, you need to make sure that whoever is registering is who he says to be. right? Because otherwise it doesn't make any sense to have auditability. And as for the future, there are lots of things that can be done. So we have actually implemented our DLOG construction, and it works pretty well. So we played around with 250 users, and the timings were reasonable, even though we only wanted a proof of concept. But of course, there are surely other ways of doing it for DLOG-based signatures, which are nicer, faster, I don't know. And it would be very interesting to try and find a design matching our generic functionality for other type of signatures like RSA, or even, I don't know, post-quantum signatures like dilithium or code-based, whatever. No? So it would be very nice. So this is all I had to say today. Thanks a lot.
Okay, any questions for our speaker? Maybe I can start things off. So one of the challenges with passwords, of course, is they're typically quite weak secrets. People reuse them. They're obviously not normally very long. So I think one of the benefits of your scheme might be that you won't be able to attempt to try and regenerate keys or produce key sets unless you're being online with the server, and therefore maybe this is also a sort of benefit of your scheme. Have I understood correctly?
Yeah, I mean, this is correct. It's both a benefit and also might be seen as a drawback at some point, right? Because you need to be online. But on the other hand, it's good that if your password is leaked, you can keep track and somehow discard all the signatures that might have been generated from a leaked password. So the good thing is that as the server has to be involved when producing the signatures, if there has been a password leakage, maybe he's aware of it, and then maybe he can prevent from new signatures to be linked to that concrete user. So
yeah. So
it's
also just from an audit perspective, know which things might have been signed after the password's been leaked, and therefore how many mis-signings have happened. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
There's another question here.
Hi. Did you formally verify the security properties of the protocol? So, I mean, is that one resilient against man-in-the-middle attacks or replay attack? And further, the other question is, during the authentication phase, I saw that the server 1 and the server 2 are sending the B1 and the B2 towards to the user. But are they sending also their certificates or not?
Okay, so thanks a lot for the question. So, okay, I'll start with the first question. We indeed have a security proof, so a formal security proof in the UC model. So, in principle, such attack should not be possible. No? If the proof is correct, we would be safe. That's as far as we can say. So we have a complete proof, and we hope that is meaningful. But of course, it is as secure as the whole UC framework might be somehow. And with respect to the second phase, the registration, the second question, the registration phase is on an authenticated channel. So at that moment, everyone knows who he is talking to. And indeed, we need to have, in particular for server 2, we need to have certificates for his keys, because he's going to sign at some point, and people should be able to verify this, at least the auditor, right? So our requirements in that respect are that we need this authenticated channel for the registration phase. So client and the two servers should be able to verify who they're talking to at that point. And then later on, still, we need that somehow people can verify servers 2 signatures. So these are the requirement. That's a very good point.
Great, thank you. Oh, there's another question over here.
Hi, you describe a system with 2 servers. Does it generalize to N servers?
Yes, I think it's not, we could have more servers using a different maybe threshold or OPRF procedure. So for if we describe a different way of evaluating this pseudo-random function cooperatively, then sure, we could have more servers.
And the benefit of this would be all but one server. No, all but one server could be malicious.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point. So if you have, I mean, if you can handle that on the registration phase in terms of authentication, it will be more robust, of course.
Any final questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned in your future research you will be looking at post-quantum signatures. I was wondering, for your particular application, what matters the most? The signature size, the public key size, the signature verification time, or the signing time?
I mean, for me, the first thing that matters most, which is behind, which is on before we're even thinking of how to use it, is to find a way of cooperatively constructing secret keys for such a scheme, for a post-quantum scheme. So to find a scheme in which this is suitable. In terms of usability, I think the critical part would probably be to have key generation being as lighter as possible. But I didn't think about it. So I'm saying, I'm going to be fair. I said this is nice future work, but I didn't say we started looking at it. I wish we would. But I just throw this to people who would know more about post-quantum signatures. I think that's, of course, in what is more critical here is the key generation, because this is what we're distributing. Right? We are somehow sweeping under the rug how long it takes later for the user to sign, or how costly it is to verify signatures. We do not care that much. No? So if you find a reasonable way to construct cooperatively secret keys for lattice-based schemes, for instance, then that would be cool for such an application.
Great. Let's thank Maria one more time for her talk.
Thanks, everyone. It's been a pleasure.